Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. I want to thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. When we talk about a motion such as this one, I think it's important to talk about the concrete situation of the communities, the situation that the communities are facing, and this is why I want to talk about the reality of what is happening in my riding with regard to the Aboriginal communities. First of all, I want to apologize in advance if I mispronounce the names of the schools and communities in the Algonquin College, in Algonquin language rather. It's something that I will be working at throughout my term in order to improve my pronunciation of the Algonquin language, but I'm just beginning. First of all, the first community that I would like to talk about is the Winway community, which is in the eastern part of Témiscamingue. It's a remote community, fairly remote, and in that community there is the Ama Asawan School, which provides kindergarten up to high school, that is grade 11. The program is in Algonquin and English. So this is the only school in my riding that provides full education within the community, that is from first grade to the last year of high school. The problem that there is with this school is that the building has been deemed inadequate, so this has compromised the health to some extent of the students who were attending that school. And after that situation, they decided to rebuild. So reconstruction is underway within that community in order to rebuild that school. In Témiscamingue First Nation, the school Kiwitsin provides education up to grade 8, which means in concrete terms that the students who want to continue their education after grade 8 have to go to a different province in order to continue their studies in English and New Lisker, which is some 30 kilometers away, or else to go to Notre Dame du Nord to get their education in French in order to continue, if they so wish. And when we go further north in Abitibi to Apikogan, which is a reserve that is close to Amos, the Miigwech School is a primary school only, and the program is taught in French. And Algonquin is also taught there. And then students have to, starting in secondary school, have to go to a provincial school in Amos. I want to say that Pikogan, in terms of the education at the primary level, is really a model that should be respected and encouraged. If we go elsewhere, that is to Wolf Lake, which is another community, there are very few inhabitants that live on reserve. The majority, in fact, do live off reserve. So the children have just a single school on the reserve as such and have to go to Témiscamingue, or which is another provincial school, and where teaching is done in English and in French. And when we talk about the other communities, there is Gervish Lake Kitwa, which is a very large population of 825 inhabitants. For my riding, it's a significant community. 2/3 live off reserve. So there, too, there is no school. The children will have to attend the same school in Témiscamingue, where courses are given in French and in English. This community, although it has no school, has already expressed its desire to have one. When we talk about this motion, one of the major things that we are targeting is that we want children to have the right to have a good quality education that takes into consideration their culture. The problem that we see in concrete terms in my communities is that, except for this school in Winway, for the First Nations community, not all children can complete their education right up until the last grade of high school without having to go through a provincial school, which does not teach the Algonquin culture, does not take into consideration their reality. So everybody has to go through a different school. For example, with regard to Témiscamingue First Nation, the language is English. The children then are having to choose, do they want to go further in their education? When they want to go further in their education, they have to either travel further and go into the Ontario school and live or go to school in an Anglophone community, or they have to somehow continue their training in French. It's not an obvious choice. I would like to quote. Just a moment here. I would like to quote Marguerite Gaudreau, a teacher at Miigwech School in Picogan, and Ms. Gisèle Mahou. And they say that understanding the language of teaching is a difficulty, a clear difficulty. 29.4% of the primary schools and 38% of the secondary school students indicated that they didn't understand well or little the directions given by the teachers in the classrooms. So we have a situation here where the children, the Aboriginal children, are required in order to continue their education to go into a normal school, which includes all the other children's, where they don't teach the Algonquin culture, and furthermore, they are in a situation where they don't even understand what the teachers are saying and telling them to do. They don't understand the work they're being asked to do, where it's extremely difficult for them to adapt. And it's clear that there are situations like this, and these situations could lead to children dropping out of school. According to Mr. Lepage, education officer, Aboriginals, there are fewer Aboriginals to reach post-secondary and secondary school level. 40% of Aboriginals have not completed the third level in high school. So, although the data is partial, when we talk about this, the dropout rate does exist within the Aboriginal community, even at the primary school level. It's extremely worrisome. And when we think about our young children who are under 12 years of age, they're 10, they're 8, they're 9, and they're dropping out of school, well, I think there is a strong reason for concern here. In some studies, although the data is partial, that there are already 10% dropout rates in the primary school level. We're talking about elementary school age children, and we know that these rates can reach 50% when we talk about the high schools. And often in high school, this is when students have to leave their school, go from their Aboriginal communities to go to the provincial schools elsewhere. So we have to ask ourselves the question, children are dropping out exactly at a time when they have to leave their home schools within their communities where they learned the Algonquin culture and language, and they have to move into a different educational system. And I think this is a major point, a final point that I want to raise. As a nurse by training, I would say that when we talk about health factors and one of the major points that determines how healthy people are or not is poverty in their level of education. We expect there to be a correlation when you talk about lower level of education. Then it's much more difficult to obtain a well-paid job, for example. So, unfortunately, it's more likely that you will live in poverty. And that is why we should really focus significant attention on providing Aboriginal children with a good quality education.
It's critical that our children be able to breathe and have good work, a good job later. And we can't forget that these children will be there to help the community, and they will be there to help all of the people there. So they are very united people, the Algonquins. And someone who stays there is going to help all the others around them get out of the cycle of poverty. So I think it's essential for us to really do better in terms of education. And also I'd like to open the door to saying that when it's not possible to provide education from grade 1 to the end of the secondary cycle, could we at least fund the provincial schools so that they can provide cultural studies in the Algonquin tradition in their curriculum. Thank you. Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Saint-Maurice-Champlain. I was very interested by your comments because I know that world very well. I lived there for 5 or 6 years. And I'd like to know what, in your opinion, would be the cause of people dropping out of school in those communities. And how do you explain that almost all of the Algonquins are Anglophones in an almost entirely Francophone region? The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Yes, I think that in my speech I tried to demonstrate the link between dropping out and the fact that students had to go to schools outside of their communities. There's a clear link there to me. When Native students can be together, they can help each other, and all are experiencing a similar situation. They have lived in the same culture. They can help each other. And then all of a sudden they find themselves in a small school of some 200 students, and all of a sudden they're parachuted into a huge school of 2,000 or something that doesn't understand their culture, doesn't understand their reality, doesn't support them. And they don't understand the values that are so fundamental to an Aboriginal community. So the easiest solution for them, unfortunately, is to just drop out. And as far as English is concerned, you have to understand that these students are learning a second language. It's not their mother tongue. And unfortunately, French is a difficult language for them to learn. And so very often communities opt for English, given that it is the second language. It has less subtleties in terms of the language for them.
For Prince George, Peace River.
I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for her speech. Just wanted to know if she knew about the program that the federal government has. It's called the Education Partnership Program, and that's the program that involves First Nation schooling and the provincial schools and partnerships that go on there. And to date, more than $17.5 million has been invested to develop enhance these partnerships. I wonder if she can explain if she has heard about the program and if what she thinks of that program.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I would like to say that, of course, I've heard of this partnership. What I really wanted to emphasize in my speech was the concrete results that are being seen in the communities. And, of course, I've given you a sketch of what's going on currently in my riding, in my communities, what people are experiencing, and children are not able to go from grade 1 to grade 12 to a school that's in their community, and I think that's a major problem. We need to solve that. Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Joliette. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for her excellent speech. Now, I have a question. In my riding, there's a Manawa, where the Atikamekw live. It's north of Joliette. And I'm told that they're not receiving any specific budget for language, culture, and all of the activities to promote their being able to keep their identity intact. So Atikamekw receives a small budget for education. But I think we really need to have funding for educating the youth. What do you think? The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Témiscamingue. What I think about that situation is that when we stop funding, when it becomes difficult to fund, because it's difficult to fund, and we stop valuing Aboriginal culture, and students are abandoned, if I can put it that way, we create a greater risk of seeing more and more dropouts, which is what I've seen. We need to support schools so that they can really provide basic education, but also education in terms of culture and language, which is so important in Aboriginal communities. It's a major point if we want to reduce the level of dropping out, and it will be a great addition to their lives. Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for Saint-Maurice